Faculty of Humanities is hosting our second Emma Mashinini Memorial Lecture. And in a true humanities way, we are that faculty that brings people from different culture together, right? So we celebrate you for doing that with us. And then also we have an online audience that has joined us tonight. We also want to greet them to say you're welcome to our memorial lecturer. And for those that are joining us for the first time, we have our volunteers from Faculty of Humanities who are doing their work integrated learning. They will be able to usher you if you want to, maybe let's see, you want to inquire about the restrooms and so forth, right? Any other inquiries, please let us know. Our team is also at the foyer. But we also want to let you know that this is a safe space. So if there's anything that you need, you'll let us know. Another rule, which is very simple, let us respect our delegates, our dignitaries, when they're actually giving a presentation, because that, if your devices are on, that might actually affect the technical team. Another thing is, we are not joined by our MEC members, our executive dean, but we have the pleasure tonight, and it's such a privilege for us, we are actually joined by the former I don't even know how to say this, because I was telling Mr. Tokyo Swale that when we were SRC, he came and gave us a leadership talk. But we're joined by a former member of parliament and also a leader with us tonight. Can we please give him a round of applause? We also have Honorable Surep Asha, who's the Deputy Minister for Finance, National Treasury with us. Let us give our dignitaries a round of applause. There's a lot of dignitaries that have joined us, but all protocol observed. I'm not alone tonight as your guest, as your master of ceremony. We also have Prof. Tinwade Ojo from the Faculty of Humanities, who will actually come and join us tonight. And I'm just going to call her so that we can proceed with the program. Thank you so much.
Sambunani, Kuyamora, Likai. Good evening, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. It's good to see you once again. This is the second memorial lecture for Emma Mashinini lecture, and we welcome you for joining us tonight out of your busy schedule. Just like Lebohana said, this is the University of Johannesburg, and I think some of our students and staff are here. So let's greet our guests the way we do it in UJ way. University of Johannesburg, all the way. University of Johannesburg. Thank you so much. A round of applause for our guests. This year's lecture is titled From Protest to Power, 70 Years of Women's Struggle for Freedom, Justice, and Democratic Renewal in South Africa. And this is actually a sort of reflection for us to reflect on the broader history of women's resistance, leadership, and contribution to South Africa's democratic project. So without further ado, I would just like to welcome our honored guest, Professor Sian Khan, our Deputy VC Academic. She's on her way. And standing in gap for her is our Executive Dean of Humanities, and Professor Camila Naido, who will be doing the welcoming speech on our behalf. And we have the privilege of welcoming our Deputy Minister of Finance, our former COSATU Secretary, Sakawu President, and most especially our keynote tonight, Honorable Zingizwa Losi. Thank you so much for honoring us. And we also want to welcome Professor Riandu. Thank you so much. She is the granddaughter of Emma Mashinini. So it's going to be a rich lecture tonight as we reflect on this program. Thank you so much. I'm going to quickly read Prof. Camila's bio before I usher her in. So she is our executive dean of the Faculty of Humanities at University of Johannesburg. She's also a professor of sociology and has vast publications in areas of gender relations, family, violence against women, poverty, and inequality. Her PhD was from the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom, and she has served as as a member of the Association of Commonwealth Scholars. She has taught for other South African institutions, have various funded projects, including the Gen V project, which builds comparative and sustainable insight into the drivers of GBV. Furthermore, she is a journal editor of South African Review of Sociology and a guest editor for Development Southern African Sage Open, and also a multiple award winner from national to global, and member of center boards, and have served in different review panels for universities, institutions, bodies, and science council. Please, can we please give a round of applause for our executive dean, Professor Camilla Naido.
Thank you very much to Prof. Tinuadi Ojo for that very warm welcome. I greatly appreciate it. So Sunny Bonani, Dumelang. Thank you very much. Good evening, distinguished guests, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and compatriots. As you heard, I'm Camilla Naidu. I am the Executive Dean in the Faculty of Humanities. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to UJ for the second Emma Mashinini public lecture. This welcome address was supposed to be presented by our DVC, our MEC member, but she's been delayed, so I'm going to be reading this on behalf of her. So this is what she would have been saying to you should she have been standing here before you. No, it's not the vote of thanks. This is the opposite of the vote of thanks. So this evening, we gather not only to honor one of South Africa's most remarkable daughters, Emma Mashinini, but also to commemorate 70 years since the historic 1956 Women's March to the Union Buildings, a defining moment in our nation's liberation history when over 20,000 courageous women united across all racial, cultural, and political divides to challenge injustice and proclaim that freedom could never exist without the liberation of women. Allow me to also extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished keynote speaker, Zingiswa Phyllis Losi, President of COSATU, whose leadership continues to advance the rights of workers, women, and the most vulnerable members of our society. We are honored by your presence and look forward to your reflections this evening. And I think let's give it another warm round of applause. I also warmly welcome our distinguished discussant, Professor Randu Magesa Barthel from the University of Marburg, Germany, whose internationally recognized scholarship on labor movements, gender, and social justice brings an invaluable perspective to today's conversation. I wish to acknowledge our special guests, Honorable Ashur Sarupen, Deputy Minister of Finance. I think Mr. Makulu Ledwaba is not here, but we welcome him in his absence, former President of Causa and founding leader of COSATU. Mr. Tokyo Tsekwale, entrepreneur, former Premier of Gauteng and former Minister of Human Settlements. I think Mr. Siza Njekelana is coming, former member of the National Assembly of South Africa. Mr. Patrick Elani, President of SACAU. Mr. Jayendra Naidu, Chair of the Board, Lancaster Group, and Emma Mashinini, members of the Emma Mashinini family, members of St. Albans Cathedral, representatives of COSATU, NUMSA, and the broader labor movement, government leaders, business leaders, policy stakeholders, individual and civil society organizations. women's organizations, and of course, University of Johannesburg executive leadership, who might be here today, staff and students, all protocols observed. So we extend our sincere appreciation to the Emma Mashinini Foundation for its valued partnership with the Faculty of Humanities, University of Johannesburg, particularly through the Center for the Study of Race, Gender, and Class. We are proud to continue building this annual lecture series as a platform for critical dialogue, public engagement, and transformative scholarship on issues that shape South Africa's democratic future. As the University of Johannesburg celebrates 21 years of academic excellence and social impact, we reaffirm our commitment to producing knowledge that transforms lives. UJ is today recognized as one of South Africa's and one of Africa's leading young universities and continues to make significant contributions to research, innovation, and the advancement of the Sustainable Development Goals. We are especially proud of our work in expanding educational access, reducing poverty through knowledge production, and preparing graduates who become ethical leaders capable of addressing society's most pressing challenges. These institutional commitments resonate profoundly with the life and legacy of Emma Mashinini. Emma Mashinini demonstrated that leadership is not measured by position or privilege, but by courage, integrity, and unwavering commitment to justice. Through her leadership within the labor movement, she amplified workers' voices, challenged systemic oppression, defended women's dignity, and insisted that democracy must deliver meaningful social justice and economic justice. Her legacy reminds us that political freedom without economic justice remains incomplete. Today's lecture theme invites us to reflect on an important journey from protest to power. Yet it also asks a more difficult question. What does power mean if it does not transform the lives of ordinary people? 70 years after the Women's March and more than 30 decades into democracy, South Africa has undoubtedly made important strides. Women occupy positions of political leadership, shape public policy, lead universities, businesses, and civil society organizations, and continue to influence national development. Yet profound inequalities remain. Women continue to experience disproportionate levels of poverty, unemployment, gender-based violence, unequal access to economic opportunities, and persistent barriers to leadership. Young women, particularly those from working class and rural communities, continue to bear the weight of intersecting inequalities of race, gender, and class. These realities call upon all of us, not only government, but universities, organized labor, business, and civil society, to work collectively towards a more inclusive and equitable democracy. At the University of Johannesburg, this commitment is reflected in both our teaching and our public engagement. Through the Center for the Study of Race, Gender, and Class, the university has developed accredited short learning programs that strengthen leadership, gender-responsive governance, digital inclusion, feminist scholarship, and public policy. These programs are equipping emerging leaders across Africa with the knowledge and practical skills required to contribute to democratic renewal and inclusive development. The center is also expanding its partnerships with organized labor, including executive leadership development initiatives, with COSATU and NUMSA, demonstrating our shared commitment to empowering workers and advancing transformative leadership. I think we must give our center under Prof. Ojo a warm round of applause. So this reflects Emma Mashinini's own belief that education and political consciousness are indispensable tools for liberation. As we engage in tonight's discussion, may we remember that democracy is not a destination, but an ongoing project. It requires active citizenship, ethical leadership, accountable institutions, and the courage to confront injustice wherever it persists. The story of South African women is not simply one of resistance, it's a story of leadership, it is a story of resilience, It is a story of building institutions, strengthening democracy, and imagining new possibilities for future generations. Tonight's conversation reminds us that the work of democratic renewal remains unfinished and that every generation has the responsibility to carry the struggle forward. I trust that this lecture will inspire thoughtful dialogue, challenge our assumptions, and encourage renewed commitment to building a South Africa where freedom, justice, equality, and dignity are experienced by all. It now gives me great pleasure to formally welcome you to the University of Johannesburg and to wish the Emma Mashinini Public Lecture every success as it continues to grow into one of South Africa's leading platforms for dialogue on democracy, gender justice, and social transformation. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Camilla. The way I'm so excited, I think in a true African way, I'll just say, because today it's actually a celebration, and Prof reminded us that this is the space to explore and exchange knowledge and information. And what was actually touching is the fact that Emma Mashinini, Prof actually reminded us, was not only a trade unionist, but an anti-apartheid activist and human rights advocate whose life were centered on dignity, workers' rights, and social justice. So I'll add a UJ value and also integrity and impact, right? So without wasting any time, in our midst, we also have Mr. Jayendra Naidu. He's actually the former national official of SAWUSA. He's going to join us as he will be announcing the Emma Mashinini video tribute. Can we please give Sir a round of applause?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am a last-minute stand-in for Makulu Ledwaba, the former president of CAWUSA, who was going to introduce the video, and I'm happy to do it on his behalf. We have the Emma Mashinini Foundation, which is made up of the Mashinini family, two of whose members are here, the Lancaster Group, which is a company that I am part of, and Sekau, which is the derivative today of what Emma Mashinini started many years ago. And the three parties form the foundation, and Sekau and the Lancaster Group are co-funding the activities of the foundation. I can say we are delighted to have this partnership now for the second year with UJ for the annual lecture, which commemorates Emma Mashinini's inspirational story and her history and her contribution to South Africa, which she made in two sectors. She contributed in the trade union sector as well as in the religious sector. And you can see the openness of her spirit is represented today in the diversity of the people who are attending this event. You have union leaders, you have political leaders from across the spectrum, young students who were born many years after Emma Mashinini did her work. So before introducing the video, which I think is a short video which captures the Emma Mashinini story, I would like to take the opportunity to tell you a story of mine, my story. You know, when you pass 60 years old, you can't get away without sharing a story. So in 1975, when Emma Mashinini founded CAWUSA, employees, what we call workers, in South African law, did not include black people. All the rights of unions were therefore only assigned to people who fit the definition today of white, colored, and Indian. And the law did not allow workers of different race groups to have the same union. So CAWUSA, when Emma Mashinini started it, it was the parallel union of black workers in the commercial sector. The biggest union was the white union, the National Union of Distributive Workers, and there was the Colored and Indian Union, National Union of Commercial, Catering and Allied Workers. In 1979, they opened an office in Durban, the Kawusa office, and I joined that union in 1981. Can I ask those of you who were born after 1981, please to raise your hand? It's a majority, including the Honorable Deputy Minister. And that was the year that legislation was passed to enable workers, black workers, to be called employees and workers to belong to any union. I met Emma Mashinini, although I joined the union. I joined the Colored and Indian Union, NUCOR, in 1981. All of us only became part of the same union in 1985. And I met Emma Mashinini for the first time in 1984, in the middle of a 6-month-long strike of Spar workers, which she finally came down from Johannesburg to help us negotiate the rehiring. No, actually, I'm talking nonsense. I met her before that in 1983 with Alan Fine, who was sitting there. Alan joined the union in 1978. Those of you who were born after 1978, raise your hand. Yes, Alan Fine was. So anyway, it's once you start talking about those days, which were so different to today, I think the purpose of this foundation and for this is to keep the flame alive, to say that, you know, it wasn't all marches and victories. It was tough struggles, finding the space in the legal framework that allowed unions to operate. It was a very challenging time, and I think we're all grateful today for the struggles of the time. So with those words, I'd like to hand back to the MC for the video.
Short, powerful woman. Everyone was very deferential around her. And she had a different style of negotiating.
Her faith kept her going. Mama was forever fighting. She was forever trying to assert herself. And there was a lot of anger.
Apartheid was completely, apart from being evil, it was completely illogical. They believe that if you are white, you are intelligent. If you are black, you are stupid. So for a black person, you have no choice.
She was a complete missile from nowhere.
Her contribution was immense. If you look at the logo of COSATU, there were only 3 men in that logo. Emma is the one who fought for the one at the back, to be a woman with a baby.
I would support the previous comrade that said that one of the people should be a woman, because I believe that that is the way that we can encourage our women who are in the factories and all over as a physical sign that they should be involved.
She was amazing in the sense that she took on responsibilities that she didn't have to take on. She worried when she didn't have to worry.
I was born on the 21st of August 1929 at 18th Diagonal Street, Rosettenville, a white suburb in the South Johannesburg. I was a third child of a big family, the 6 sisters and a brother. My elder sister, Beauty, died at a young age and was buried in the Brixton Cemetery, which was later to become exclusively for whites. Even our cemeteries became segregated. I was in Kliptown when the Freedom Charter was drawn up. My friends were all in their colors, and I didn't have that. I was not a card-carrying member, but at that meeting, I was a member in body, spirit, and soul. If I speak of a transport problem, I am speaking about a different transport problem from anything the white worker will have to suffer. We have these very long distances to travel, and our problems concern the pass laws and schooling and hospitals, exhaustion and poor diet. I was starting the union for black shop workers from scratch.
The unions have to be there, because if there's no union, then these whites, they do as they wish.
When I started Kawusa, I remember telling myself I would give it 10 years and then it would be time to move on. I had seen Kawusa through its opening chapters. From being a union with no members to being a union with over 80,000 members, with power and influence and with great achievements behind it.
She was detained for a trade union work.
We went to John Foster Square, where I was put into a room, and there I was interrogated and harassed and given a number. "You are a fat kefir maid," one said to me. "You are a nuisance and a troublemaker." I was shocked and alone. I was in the center of a mess.
These were solitary confinements. They would either starve you of the food and give you quite horrible food. They would assault you. They would force you to write a statement. Otherwise, they would write a statement for you and ask you to sign it.
They always wanted the truth when I had no more truth to tell. I don't think they ever really understood that, in fact, there was nothing to give away. But they always tried to find it. This nothing.
You couldn't just imagine her in prison. You know prison not to be a place for anybody. What about a mother, an elderly woman?
I didn't know anything about the psychological effect of trauma. I didn't understand that you could go mad from being arrested. I just thought I was sick. I would fall down and actually weep with the effort of remembering the name of my daughter.
She got released. She was not demoralized. She continued.
I've lived a hard life, in many ways a horrible life, but I've always wanted to see the day of liberation. And when we get there, I am prepared to die, to say I've lived and struggled for all these years. Now that we've achieved justice, now that we've attained that, now may I not rest in peace.
Thank you so much to all the Gen Zs that was here. I hope you understand that was a powerful reflection. And if I was you, in a true UJ way, I will make tonight's memorial lecture a trend, right? So let's give the team behind a round of applause. And also, I'll just like to ask everyone that is here just to stand up as we give a moment of silence for our late Molima Geza. She's the former director of Emma Mashinini Foundation. And actually, she joined us last year when we had the first memorial lecturer. Just one moment of silence. Thank you so much. You may be seated. So we're going to have just a picture tribute. And after that, Prof. Tinwade Ojo will introduce our keynote address.
Tonight my heart is heavy because I remember Mamoli. She was such a darling last year, and we celebrate her legacy. We celebrate her leadership, and we celebrate her for continuing with the work that our mother, Emma Mashinini, laid on the ground. May her gentle soul rest in perfect peace. Thank you so much. I'm going to be calling our keynote and our discussant, and to come to the front. I will read their bio, but before that, as I was watching Emma Mashinini's video, it just resonated with me what Dr. Pulani Modiha, the CEO of FMB, was saying yesterday in a program with community engagement, that as women, have we asked ourselves, who gave you the right to dream? And I'm saying that to the youths and everybody here. Who gave you the right to dream? Who gave you the motivation to dream and to achieve? And how do you intend to achieve that dream? These are great reflections of what has happened during South Africa women's history. We've seen women organizing, we've seen women protesting, we've seen women mobilizing, negotiating, sacrificing. You heard what she said. She said, I've lived a hard life, but when it comes to freedom, that is when I can die. And these are the legacies, the sacrifice that we're all living on. So tonight, as we commemorate these 70 years of women's struggle, let us reflect on this unfinished business of transformation. Because UN Women said it will take 336 years before we reach gender equality. So how long will it take us in Africa? I keep on asking that. So political freedom has not been translated into economic equality, decent work, gender justice, or equal access to power. Let us ask ourselves, How do we ensure that women exercise the transformative power and go through the leadership that our leaders have laid there for us? Before I commence, I want to acknowledge the presence of our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Sian Khan. Thank you so much. We are honored to have you in our presence. Thank you so much. Can we please give our leadership a round of applause? Thank you. Honorable Zingizwa Losi, please can you come to the front? I will read your bio. Please can we give her a round of applause? Prof. Riandu, please can you come to the front? Can we also give her a round of applause? Honorable Zingizwa is a distinguished South African trade unionist and labor leader. I had the pleasure of meeting her last year when I was honored to be the keynote for COSATU Feminist conference. So she has played a significant role in advancing workers' rights, social justice, gender equality, and inclusive economic development in South Africa and the broader African region. She began her leadership journey within the trade union movement and was elected the second deputy president of the Congress of South African Trade Union, COSATU, in 2009, a position she held until September 2018. In that year, she made history by being elected unopposed. I repeat, unopposed, as the first woman president of COSATU. Can we give her a round of applause? She was re-elected to the position in September 2022 and still continue to serve as COSATU president. Who says women cannot do it? Please let us clock it and give her a clap. Thank you. Our leadership extends beyond South Africa. In October 2017, she was elected the president of the Southern African Trade Union Coordinating Council, SATU, at its meeting in Tanzania, representing the interests of trade union across the SADC region and its 21 affiliated organizations. She was re-elected in October 2022 to that position in South Africa and reaffirming her leadership within the regional labor movement. At the international level, she was elected to the General Council of the International Trade Union Confederation, ITUC, in Melbourne, Australia, in November 2022. In June 2024, she further strengthened her international labor leadership credentials by being elected to the governing body of the International Labor Organization at the 112th session of the ILO conference in Geneva. Our leadership reflects a strong commitment to workers' rights, decent work, social protection, gender equality, collective bargaining, and social and economic justice. Our achievement as the first woman to lead COSATU also represent an important milestone in advancing women's leadership within South Africa's labor movement. She has several educational qualifications, I will be skipping that, and have undertaken professional training in business, project management, and media and communication. Through her sustained leadership at national, regional, and international level, President Zingizwa Losi has established herself as an influential voice in the labor movement and an important advocate for workers, women, and social justice. Can you please join me to give her a round of applause as we welcome her to the podium? Thank you.
Mandla, long live the undying spirit of Mama Emma Mashinini, long live. Long live the women of 1913, long live. Long live the undying spirit of women of 1956, long live. Malibongwe. Kamala Makhosikazi. Thank you very much, program directors. Professor Khan, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic in the University of Johannesburg, Professor Camilla Naidu, the Emma Mashinini Foundation and the Emma Mashinini family, students, academia, shop stewards, veterans of our struggle, comrades and friends, we gather in the name of a giant. We gather to remember a woman who was told she was nothing, but proved she was everything. We are gathering this evening to honor Dr. Emma Mashinini. When we say from protest to power, we are describing Mama Emma's life. But we are also describing our country as South Africa. We are describing the difficult journey that you, the young women and men in this hall, must now complete. And I must say that, Program Director, this is not a polite commemoration. Mama Emma did not like polite politics. Mama Emma liked honest politics, militant politics, working class politics. So today, we will not simply praise her, but rather we'll ask ourselves, are we worthy of her? Mama Emma was born, as it was said, on the 21st of August in 1929 in Rosenville, Johannesburg. She was born black. She was born working class. She was born a woman under a system that despised all three. She grew up in Sophia Town before the bulldozers came. She saw her family forcibly being removed. She understood what apartheid was. And that apartheid was not just a law in parliament. Apartheid was a truck at your doorstep at 4 o'clock in the morning. Apartheid was your community being declared a white area due to forced removals. Like so many black girls, she was forced to leave school. And at the age of 14, she was on the factory floor in the garment factory. There, a white foreman called grown black women girls, as we would have seen in the video. There, in that factory floor, you could be fired for being pregnant. There, the wages were so low that you could work all month and still borrow money to eat. But it was also there, in that factory floor, that Emma found her university. The shop floor taught Mama that exploitation has an address and that it can be fought. So, Mama Emma did not become a leader by appointment. She became a leader by struggle. She joined the Garment Workers Union, as we would have heard, and then the National Union of Clothing Workers. For 12 years, she served as a shop steward. And in those years, she learned the hard work of organizing. Comrade Giandra, I always say that the challenges that are confronting the trade union movement today, if we were to pause for a moment and go back to your times, we would be able to build a very strong trade union to confront the current challenges that the working class has faced. If we were to pause and let it not be about ourselves, but about the working class. In those years, when she served as a shop steward, she understood that there will be house visits after a 10-hour shift. She had to go through secret meetings in church, as it was said, because the special branch was watching. The discipline of collecting a 50 cents subscription when workers themselves had nothing. What are we dealing? Are we worthy of her? Because what we hear today, we're collecting millions of rands from workers. Workers are left still the same or worse off. When we take subscription, when we invest their money in investment companies, and we fight about what we have collected from workers. Are we worthy of her? This work mattered to her. The clothing unions were the backbone of the South African Congress of Trade Unions, SACTU, a predecessor of COSATU, in 1955. SACTU taught us that trade union cannot be apolitical. It taught us that collective bargaining without national liberation is incomplete, and that national liberation without collective bargaining is a lie. And when SACTU was banned and forced into exile, its spirit lived on in women like Umamu Emma, who kept the factory floor organized. And I must say that it is that unbroken line of struggle that led us to a historic launch of COSATU on the 1st of December in 1985 in Durban. Mama Emma, as it was shown in the video, was there. And when some men in that hall, and I love this so much, I always quote it during the August month. And I'm glad that we had an opportunity to watch it here. When some men in that hall wanted a logo of this federation to only have male workers, it was Mama Emma and other women comrades who stood up and said, no, our federation must carry a woman with a baby on her back. And that image remains our identity. It reminds us that labor is reproductive as well as productive. Because in the absence of women, the reproductive cycle stops. And so you can't produce the next labor. People that must work the economy. So in 1975, at a time when it was illegal for a black worker to strike, and when the police could detain you without trial, Mama Emma took a decision that defines courage. During that time, she founded the Commercial Catering and Allied Workers Union, KAUSA, now SACAU, an affiliate of COSATU, and she became its first general secretary. And I say, let us think about it. 1975, she was one of a few black women in the entire country to lead a national union. She was organizing in the retail, in hotels and catering, where black workers were treated as temporary, invisible, and easily replaceable. Part of that has not changed. She led battles that many of you students only read about. Battles against the great retail monopolies. SACAU today is dealing with retrenchment in one of these great retail monopolies. The battles against OK bazaars. I'm glad I'm in that generation that went to shop at OK bazaars, at least. I can be able to have an understanding of how OK bazaars looked. Battles against hotel groups who said black waiter could not serve white customers. And I must say, Comrade Tokyo, that some of us saw this and experienced it during our time in the military, where a black waiter could not serve white generals. Post-1994, in Bloemspruit, where I was. Battles for maternity leave, when bosses said pregnancy was misconduct. And this is way before 2000, our 1994 dispensation, before the birth of the Federation COSATU. But I can tell you, coming from the Metal Workers Union, at some point when we were negotiating on collective bargaining issues, employers, big auto employers said, we are not in a business when we demanded maternity leave. They said, we're not in a business of manufacturing babies. We're in a business of manufacturing vehicles. Mama Emma during the 70s was already dealing with this issue. Battles for maternity leave, as I've said, when bosses saw it as a misconduct. Battles simply for the right to be recognized as a union. And for this, the apartheid state punished her, as we have heard. And in November 1981, they came for her. Under Section 6 of the Terrorism Act, she was detained for 6 months without charge. She spent months in solitary confinement at Pretoria Central in a cell that is meant to break her. She was subjected to interrogation, as she has said, to humiliation and threats that her children could be taken away from her. But she did not break. She wrote later, "Strikes have followed me all my life." It's the book that is outside. Please get a copy. Indeed, they had. But oppression had followed her all her life, and she chose to fight. And so the democratic breakthrough then of 27 of April 1994 did not fall from the sky. I want us to appreciate that. It was not a gift from the goodwill of our oppressors. It was the direct product of the strikes, of the detention, of the funerals and the boycotts led by the generation of Mama Emma. When we entered the union buildings post-1994, we did not go there to enjoy tea. That's not what Mama Emma and her generation fought for, Comrade Tokyo and many others. We went there to dismantle centuries of systematic discrimination against black people and women. And today, workers' hard-won rights are enshrined in the Constitution and our progressive labor laws in our country. And I want to remind this audience tonight that, especially the law students, what those laws are. First, it is the Constitution of the Republic, as it is termed the most progressive constitution in the world. Chapter 2 of that constitution guarantees the right to equality, to dignity and fair labor practices. And Section 23 of that constitution guarantees the right to form and join a trade union and to strike. It is in the constitution of our country. The Labor Relations Act, these are the gains that Mama fought hard so. It made collective bargaining a right, not a favor. And it created CCMA, the Labor Court and Organizational Rights. The third is the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, which is the minimum. When you enter the labor market, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act is what, that's where the start is. Nothing below that. because it sets limits on working hours. It gave us the annual leave and sick leave. And for the first time, 4 months of maternity leave. And I must say that the union that Mama Emma gave birth to, which is Sakau, went even further in securing, I think it's a 12 months paid maternity leave. We don't have any other union in the federation that has managed to secure that. It way exceeds the basic conditions of Employment Act. The National Minimum Wage Act, a COSATU victory that said no worker in South Africa may be paid below a national minimum wage. And over the past 6 years, we have doubled the wages for domestic workers. We have increased farm workers' wages by 66% and increased the minimum wage overall by 50%. We have the UIF, we have the COIDA, we have the Occupational Health and Safety Act. These laws are not technicalities. They are monuments to Mama Emma's generation. We backed these laws with more than 60% of state expenditure today going towards the upliftment of the working class, to education, to health, to social grants, housing, and social infrastructure. And these gains, I want us to always remember, were won through struggle. But we must be honest here today, comrades. As Mama was always an honest person, we have inflicted wounds upon ourselves. During the decade of the state capture and corruption, comrades within the liberation movement chose to loot what Mama Emma's generation built. It's a reality. They turned state-owned entities that were meant to drive industrialization into personal ATMs. It's a reality. They spawned a parasitic class of tenderpreneurs who produced nothing, who employed no one, who simply insert themselves between the state and the people and take a cut. And what we must be clear is what it means, the decade of state capture, is that they did not steal money. They stole hope of our people. That is why we have the generation that is here today committing suicide. Mental illness is on the rise because people of South Africa lost hope. Young people cannot be absorbed in the labor market. They graduate out of UJ and then what? That fragmented the liberation movement. It weakened the alliance. It weakened the labor movement itself. And Mama Emma warned us. She always said that a union that forgets its members will die. Today, our membership is under pressure. There's fragmentation. When you discipline comrades within the trade union movement, they shift, they move, they open another trade union. Fragmentation. Because people want to lead at all costs. Because it has ceased to be about the ordinary workers in our country. And what they are going through, it is about me, Zingi Swallows, leading at all costs. They're breakaways. Populist demagogy that promises workers heaven while delivering nothing. And all of these take their toll. And I want us to say it here. Renewal is not a slogan. It is a matter of survival for any organization. We have made real advances for women. As I've said, there's employment equity. There's equal pay for work of equal value. Women today are leading in trade unions. They are leading companies. They are leading in government departments. They are leading in universities. And when Mama started A black woman manager in the retail was unthinkable of. But we must not lie to ourselves. Because the same woman who has equity on paper walks home in fear of gender-based violence. Abengeni shift for babayovule Pick and Pay. For the first customer, they leave before the sun is up. They take public transport. Amaphara balindile along the road. And when we go in just before the shop closes, because we want to buy something, we're delaying them from getting home. And when they catch the last taxi, they are victims of gender-based violence. In one of the retail stores, we saw during August month, and yalendo yamadoda a target to August for ukuba yazi gender-based violence xa befuna siyibone ngenkani basibonisa izinto ngo-August. A female worker was attacked by her boyfriend from another retail store. This worker bought a knife from his employer's store, went and stabbed this female comrade in her workplace. She was a cashier, and she died of those stabbed wounds. When we have Convention 190 that we have ratified as this country on eliminating of violence and harassment in the world of work, protecting workers exactly against the third party. The same woman who has equal pay in the bargaining council is subjected to sexual harassment on the shop floor, especially in hospitality and the retail where Sakau organizes. But abantu xa beye kwi-massages, kuthiwa bafuna i-happy hour. Kodwa bengekho lapha for a happy hour. Ulapha for a full body massage. It's got nothing to do with how it ends. It should be that your muscles, you must feel good. And we abuzwa, do you like it hard, medium, or soft? Ku-ministry massage, nothing else. They're only asking how do you like it, the pressure of the massage. But male comrades take it further. They said, we want a happy ending. And you are at work. In the retail sector, when I was casualing at jet stores, I was told a customer is always right, but to what end? The supervisor who says your promotion depends on what you do after hours. We have seen power relations in organizations. And the statistics of this country, they shame us. The triple challenges of unemployment, of poverty and inequality were the face of a black woman. Unemployment for young women between 15 and 34 is over 50%. Poverty is feminized, because women are concentrated in the most precarious and low-paid jobs. Inequality in our country is gendered, because even women who are qualified, they remain at the bottom and men remain on top. And so the labor movement is facing a capitalist offensive that Mama Emma would have recognized, but with new tools today. How do you organize, Comrade Naidu, a worker who does not know who her boss is? We have labor brokers, we have outsourcing, we have casualization, 0-hour contracts, a young woman working at a store in a mall in Sandton while she wears a uniform of another company. And to that, uncontrolled migration that is driven by poverty in the region, with unscrupulous employers that are using or exploiting these migrant workers and divide workers along xenophobic lines. And we have a responsibility in honor of Mama to defend all workers. But we must also demand that government manages migration in a way that does not create a race to the bottom. And a new danger that stands before us today is that in the retail sector where Mama organized, in the banking and hospitality sector, the very sectors that Mama Emma built, workers are faced with the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence. Self-checkout tills replacing cashiers. Very, very convenient when you go there, but there's a worker that lost that job. Algorithmics that are replacing bank tellers and call center workers. Robots that are cleaning hotels today. And Capital will tell you this in response. But there's progress. The question is for whom? Without a just transition, this means retrenchments. It means de-skilling and not reskilling. And it means surveillance. Awusakwazi nokuya toilet, iyakubalela laa nto. And I make this example and I hope that we'll take cognizance of this when we are on the drive-through, particularly in KFC. When you're on the drive-through and you start making your order in the first window, and they say, go to the second window where you collect your order. There's a timer there. When they ask you to go to the parking lot and wait for your order, it is because you can't wait for a particular period of time without moving. And if you are there and your order takes too long, it means they're being penalized. They're on the verge of losing their jobs. That's why they ask you, so don't be cheeky when they ask you to, I'll bring it. Understand that there's a timer there where they are working. Algorithmics are counting. How long have you been standing there? And it means it is their efficiency or non-efficiency thereof and their consequences of losing employment. Algorithmics that are firing you by SMS, they are monitoring your toilet break. This is what workers are confronted with. We agree we cannot be stuck in the past, but neither can we be naive. And so we're saying we need a new Labor Relations Act for the digital age. We need a right to reskilling. And we need a tax on machines that are replacing workers to fund retraining. Mama Emma fought for a non-racial South Africa, and she believed that workers, black and white, have more in common than they think. And today, that vision is fraying. On one side, we see the rise of white separatist organizations who want to take us back to the past. On the other side, we see tribalist mobilization. Those who want to reduce our hard-won South African nation into ethnic Bantustans. And the Federation of Mama Emma Mashinini must defend non-racialization or non-racialism as if our life depends on it. And so our answer to the separatist and the tribalist must be non-racialism and class solidarity. There is no white working class solution. There is no Zulu working class solution. There is only a working class solution. So, what is it that we must do? Firstly, I want to argue that we must reconnect with the student movement. Ourselves as the Federation of Mama Emma. This hall here is full of students who marched in Fees Must Fall. And that energy, Professor Naidu, must not end at graduation. The labor movement of Mama Emma must become the home for young intellectuals and young activists. We need your research, we need your anger, we need your organizational skills. Sakau, the Union of Mama Emma, and COSATU, her federation, must have student desk and a pipeline for young organizers. Secondly, what we need to do as a union federation, we must return, Comrade Naidu, to basics. Our job as a federation, as a trade union, is not to attend endless meetings in air-conditioned boardrooms. Our job is bread and butter. It is to defend jobs. It is to fight for above inflation wages, to improve the working and living conditions. It is to recruit, to service, and to organize. And every shop steward must ask, how many members have I recruited this month? How many cases have I resolved? And what must defend? Actually, we must defend centralized collective bargaining with everything we have. Mama Emma Mashinini retired, but she never retreated. In her later years, she served, as it was said, in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. She died on the 10th of July, 2017, at the age of 87. She did not die rich, but she died rich in respect. Her question to us from her book, Strikes Have Followed Me All My Life, is simple. What have you done with the freedom I fought for? And so I want to say, the students that are here today, do not just study about Umamu Emma, organize like her. To the academics, do not just write about the working class, stand with the working class. And to the shop steward and officials of unions that are here, do not just wear the red t-shirt. Live the values of Mama Emma honestly, the sacrifices that she has put and putting members first, from protest to power. It is not a straight line. It is a struggle. Protest brought us power in 1994. Now we must use power to serve protest. And I will say, to serve the ongoing protest of women against patriarchy, of workers against exploitation, of the poor against inequality. And with that, it is how we will honor Dr. Emma Mashinini, not simply by remembering her, but by continuing the struggle to which she gave her life. May her memory live long, and may we continue in the path that she has paved for all of us. Thank you very much.
Wow. Turn to your neighbor and said, are you worthy of her? Are you worthy of her? Thank you so much, Honorable. We are full. And thanks for guiding us through this legacy, where we've seen how Mama firmly believed in women's role in the struggle. And what I resonated with what you said most especially was that women are not just secondary actors, but they are actually essential in building and sustaining workers' organizations through the role. And it's really been insightful for us to hear the sacrifices of our leaders and how they have actually stand to ensure that these values actually continue to live on. So thank you so much. I'm going to be bringing in our discussant, who is actually Emma Mashinini's granddaughter. Can we give her a round of applause? Before she comes up, I will read her bio. But I'm going to say something from Mama Hema's reflection when she was in detention. She said, I struggled and struggled. I will fall down and actually weep with the effort of remembering the name of my daughter. I will try and sleep on it, wake up, and I will go without eating because this pain of not being able to remember the name of my daughter was the greatest I've ever had. I just want us tonight to reflect and appreciate the family. We talk about our heroes, but we do not sometimes think about the family and their own sacrifices too. So to Emma Mashinini family and all of you here, both absent and here present, we really want to appreciate you and we celebrate Mama's legacy with you. With us here is Prof. Rihandu Mageza Battle. She is a political scientist based at the Center of Conflict Studies at Marburg University in Germany. She earned a PhD from Goethe University Frankfurt in 2012. And as an international scholar, Rihandu's work spans multiple fields with her research and teaching focused on peace, development, and international studies. She is a co-editor of Routledge series, Gender in a Global and Local World, and serves on the editorial board of the Third World Quarterly. Among other titles, she is the author of the monograph Mobilizing Transnational Gender Politics in Post-Genocide Rwanda, which was published by Routledge and co-edited the volumes on Negotiating Normativity, Post-Colonial Appropriations, Contestations, and Transformation, which was also published by Springer. She also published African Transformation, the Trans-Regional Perspective on Development Cooperation, Social Mobility, and Cultural Change by Brill. And lastly, the German bilingual title on Violence, War, and Refugee, which is a feminist perspective on security. Can you please join me in welcoming Professor Rihandu into the podium as she comes to take over? We hope you are going to greet us in Germany.
Thank you, Prof. Ojo. Guten Abend, as we'd say in German. Good evening. Dumelang. Absheni, as we would say. Minjani. There we go. It's an absolute honor to follow Honorable Lucy in what she presented tonight. I am extremely indebted to the Center for the invitation to respond as a discussant. And I am honored by your presence as guests, as esteemed colleagues, but also as family. And I can imagine that in many ways, some people might be surprised that this is me. And I suppose it's also because there are different reasons for why I'm standing here. On the one hand, like Prof. Ojo said, I'm Gogo's granddaughter, right? And I think everybody in our family knows that that's what we used to call her, and that's who we are. But I'm also Molly's younger daughter, and I'm part of the foundation that is partnered with UJ to host tonight's event. But I'm also an academic and a scholar. And for some reason, this is not the first time that Gogo's paths and my path have crossed. It is not my comfort zone, right? And there are many ways in which we have tried to sidestep and bypass each other on our path to where we were going, right? The academic journey isn't an easy journey, and it's one that normally follows in the footsteps of those who have done. All right, we try to make sense of the world as it is today, rather than create a world through the knowledge that we have. So in that sense, I suppose I'm always trying to make sense of what it is that our forefathers, our foremothers, and also our compatriots are doing. And so you see that spread of topics that I deal with, because somehow the world that we live in is complex, and I hope that we're not pigeonholed and restricted by the various disciplines, by the various categories, and the various approaches that we might have. Now, somehow there were two questions that were posed to us tonight, and there were even more answers that were given to us tonight. But somehow those answers are not easy, and I suppose I will come with more questions towards the end of what I'm about to say. But the two main questions that framed some of the contributions that we had were, who gave you the right to dream as a driving force? But also, are we worthy of her? Right? I've heard in many occasions in different conversations that apparently there's a special relationship between grandchildren and grandparents. I don't know, the parents can attest to this. Maybe they might feel left out at times. But there are certain things that you can talk to your grandparents about, ask them about, right? Transcend the boundaries of what is acceptable, possibly, right? That your parents might not be able to. And so on the one hand, I suppose Gogo was very talkative, right? Very forceful, very powerful. She was also very reserved if she didn't want to say something, right? So prying that open as her children or as her grandchildren and finding out what is it that made you do this and that? Or what is it that drove this and that? Or where were you, right, when this and that happened, can be real challenges. And I suppose in many ways, I would always invite you, because I've done this now in preparation for tonight, is to also go back to the book that she has written to kind of see where she was actually positioning herself. Because the positioning that we know, and although we speak about how the private is political, right, and how people are born with different subjectivities, such as being Black, female, and workers, what we very often don't do, and this is something that I was surprised when rereading the book again, was to see how interspersed these different dimensions are, right? It's not to say, and people will always say, yeah, but it's about her professional life. And it is about her professional life. It is about her struggles, it's about her strikes, but it's also a lot about family, right? And it's about family where you don't expect family. So this special relationship that I was alluding to and the theme that we have for tonight brings me to this question of saying, but where was she in 1956, right? And that's the question that we were asked this Women's Day by the activists of 1956 and by the current president to say, do you know people? Where were they? And I can tell you already, just like she said, I'm not a card-carrying member of the ANC, she also said to me at some stage, I wasn't at the Union buildings in 1956. Now, it's not because she did not appreciate, maybe even in hindsight, what that was all about. She spoke about the Freedom Charter, right? She knew what politics was. But if you think about, and there you have to read the biographies together with her own life, having a child in 1949, having a child in 1951, having a child in 1954, right? Then you can see that 1956 is her child rearing age, right? So if we're talking about productive and reproductive labor, right? This is the life phase in which she was at that point in time. And she writes about it even further in her book to say that she had 3 surviving children. She had Nomsa as well, whom I see here. But she also had children who did not survive, right? And they were born after 1954. And the challenges of motherhood in that era are some that are just tremendous to read about. But on the other hand, and I think this is also really important, is that her notion of motherhood was not biological, right? I'm standing here amongst her boys, as she would call them, who were her mentees, right? Who were her trade union boys, right? Who were her worker colleagues. And rightfully so, right? They are part of our family, and we are a part of their family. She raised her sister's children, right? She went to the borders of the country to bring them back to Johannesburg, to have them with us. She had capitalist in-laws, to speak about contradictions of South Africa, right? Who were teachers and principals, but who had left the Bantu education system, or the education system, when Bantu education was introduced. And she had nephews and nieces who were in exile. She had a nephew who was in the then police force, but belonged to her favorites. And these are all these familial contradictions, dynamics, and shifts that one had to negotiate. My sister, who's just left, used to be a journalist, and she published an article in which she spoke about my twice divorced grandmother, all right? And she was chastised, as grandmothers do, by her grandmother, to say, but how can you put that out into the public, right? Because we had to navigate the realities of patchwork families before patchwork families were a trend. But, and Honorable Losi, this is something that I suppose is exactly what you were encouraging us to do in an intergenerational conversation, right? Is to understand where the strength and the resources come from, right? What makes you you, and how do you actually create a legacy that transcends you, right? Are we worthy of her? One of the copies of her book at home was inscribed with my sister's name on it. And she wrote to her in the dedication, she says, "Mpho Entle, thanks for the love and support for Gogo. It's a challenge to you as editor of magazines." And this is how you create legacy, right? You put it out there, you challenge the person, and you hope the person runs with it. And she challenged us constantly. She challenged us, on the one hand, to realize that inequality is gendered. She herself would not call herself a feminist, right? She didn't have many words to spare for feminists. And one of the arguments that we once had, or, confrontations we once had, was that I would say, I'm a feminist, and she'd say, I'm a human rights activist, right? She challenged us in a certain way to see the foundations of resilience, right? And she does it in her book when she speaks about the departed over and over again, right? When she speaks about who her support structures were, who she went to the police station with, how people actually found strategies to deal with the exploitation, with the surveillance, with the repercussions of the apartheid system. And I suppose, like you said, it's not just about strikes that follow us all the time, but it's really about the struggles that follow us, because these change, but they also stay the same. And if I may, just before I close, get to a point about how in the past our paths have actually crossed each other. I was a student at the University of Cape Town at the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s. And I was an undergrad student in gender studies, trying to get a formal qualification in feminism. And one of my lecturers had our reader for us. And in the reader, we had a chapter of Gogo's autobiography. And it was a chapter, Push Your Ass. Exactly. And it was, for me, at the very least, traumatizing, if I can put it that way. On the one hand, because this is your grandmother you're talking about, right? And to hear somebody on the shop floor telling somebody to push their ass is just not on, to put it in the least. But on the other hand, it also, and this chapter was really beneficial in that way when I look at it again, it brings to light exactly how social relations are gendered. It brings to light exactly what is your role as a woman, what is your role as a wife, what is your role, right, as a worker. What happens between black and white workers? What happens between you and your husband? What happens, in all the conditions that you live under? But still, I couldn't really contribute to that class, and I had to walk up. I think it was the late Elaine Salo who offered the class. I had to walk up to her, and I had to say to her afterwards, I'm sorry, I could not respond to this chapter because this is who I am. And normally, I was one of the most avid people in that classroom. But in that chapter at the moment, and I would have probably taken the one that Prof. Ojo read about, Dudu, right, where she struggled to remember her own child's name. But in that chapter, you also find the link between 1956 and 1976. So what she does there is that she talks about how she, as a seamstress or as a worker at Johannesburg, produced clothing for the Navy, for the Air Force, for police and traffic cops. And it's only much later that they discovered that they were also sewing camouflage uniforms, right? And this they only discovered in 1976 when they were worn. So when June 16 happened and there was a massacre of students, it is there that, again, not just these different time periods come together, but where you can actually see that political consciousness coming together in a person at the micro level and in the work that they do. Right? So I would, in this intergenerational conversation, also go back to a point where she says in the last part of her book, and this is where she speaks about what black children were willing to sacrifice and how white liberals were responding to that. And we've heard it. We've heard the part where she says, I've lived a hard life, in many ways a horrible life, right? But the part that precedes that is where she references how children activists would say that they were willing to die, right? And that they could be arrested and that they would not choose. And where somebody said, I'm not afraid to die now, but when Mandela's released, then I'll be afraid to die. So she says, the youth are prepared to die now, but they're not prepared to die when liberation comes. And I have been afraid to die. But when liberation is achieved, then I must say, I am prepared. And then it continues. So her challenges that she puts out into the world, she also took back, right? She spoke to us as the generation after her, but she listened to us as well. And that's something completely unusual, I would say, from a granddaughter's perspective. So if I were to critique her work as such, I would probably say to her, but you haven't given us enough of an idea how to collect and how to connect across social and political divides. You've told us that you do it, but how? Right? So that speaks to the transversal nature that Honorable Nozi was talking about. Student movements, workers' movements, different movements coming together. The other thing that I would have asked her or said to her was, and how do you cross national boundaries whilst keeping a sense of the purpose, but also understanding the different challenges faced by different national organizations? That speaks to the internationalism of movement solidarities, right? We have at the moment the political structures and institutions. Honorable Lozi spoke about those at length. We have the political principles. We even have the political subjects to mobilize, to organize, and to connect. But the question that remains unanswered, and that I think not we have to answer, but you have to answer, is where are we going? And I think with that, probably more than 25 years later, I could say I've completed my assignment for my gender studies class. I acknowledge the various contemporary challenges that we have. I acknowledge the difficulties in finding solutions to issues that seem endless, and I acknowledge the sacrifices that it takes to actually even just move a pin by 1 degree. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your insights, and please enjoy the evening.
Thank you so much. I'm still going to ask both of you to be seated. And also, in the interest of time, we will not have a Q&A, but definitely there's time for networking after the session. Just a quick reflection as a part of the Gen Z. I think the additional questions or the key questions that you've said is still in my mind. Are we worthy of her? So you are enjoying the 4IR, you are in this space, but use the time in a valuable way, because there are people, there are women that have sacrificed their time, their families, labor, and dedication. And I think the other one is, it's a challenge for all of us as the young ones, what are the strategies of nation building? Because if you look at the story and everything we've learned today from the keynote on the discussant, is that you can live a life of a purpose, right? And when you look at the book, it tells you that when Mama Emma Mashinini was playing a role in nation building and post-apartheid, she also became, or actually served, on South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And that's why she was appointed for the restoration of land rights in 1995, contributing to transitional justice and land reform processes. That is a reflection of Ubuntu. You can integrate reconciliation for a prosperous South Africa. So I think South Africa is safe with all of us here, and the great University of Johannesburg creating such platforms for us. One last reflection. I think I'll be biased as a political science student, first and PhD, under the leadership of Faculty of Humanities, Prof. Camila. I want to change my topic. We submitted last week, but I don't know if it's still acceptable. But this is really inspiring for all of us, and we want to thank you. I'll hand over to Prof. Ojo.
Thank you so much. And I'm telling her that it's not possible. No, thank you so much for your time. I want to humbly request our DVC and our executive dean to please come to the front to have a picture with our keynote speaker and our discussant, and also to give them the gifts that we have for them. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Once again, we want to appreciate UJ leadership, all our distinguished guests of honor, our students, our staff, all external stakeholders, and everybody that has been part of this important memorial public lecture. All protocol observed once again. To give our vote of thanks, please join me in welcoming our Vice Dean Research at the Faculty of Humanities, Prof. Pragna Rugunana, to come and give the vote of thanks. A round of applause, please.
Good evening, Sanibonani, Dumelang, and Goeienaand. Goeienaand. Distinguished guests, DVC Professor Siam Khan, Executive Dean, Professor Kamala Naidu, members of the Mashinini family, comrades, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. I think we just need to take a pause and appreciate the enormity of the legacy that has been shared with us this evening. It speaks to the power of resilient women who have helped shape South Africa. As we bring this important and thought-provoking Emma Mashinini Memorial Lecture to a close, it is my privilege on the behalf of the faculty, University of Johannesburg, and the Emma Mashinini Foundation to extend our sincere gratitude to our speaker, COSATU President Zingiswa Losi, for sharing with us such a powerful reflection on From Protest to Power, 70 Years of Women's Struggles for Freedom, Justice, and Democratic Renewal in South Africa. This has been a far more than a reflection on history. It has reminded us that the freedoms and democratic rights we enjoy today were shaped by generations of women who refused to accept injustice as inevitable. From the defiance campaigns and the historic Women's March of 1956, through the struggle against apartheid, to the continuing pursuit of equality and social justice in our democracy, women have been central actors in South Africa's journey towards freedom. The title of today's talk, From Protest to Power, also invites us to think critically about what happens after protest and the legacy of Emma Mashinini and the challenge she poses to us. How do we transform courage into institutions, representation into meaningful participation, and political freedom into social and economic justice? That is the challenge for all of us. These remain urgent questions for our country and for all of us gathered here at this important moment in 2026. We thank our discussant, Professor Riohandu Mageza Batel, for her critical insights, such a great response, and equally a wonderful tribute to the late Molly Mageza, director of the Emma Mashinini Foundation, who played an active role in 2025 and who passed away after last year's inaugural event. We are particularly grateful for the reminder that the struggle is not simply a story of the past. In fact, it is our promise to continue. The work of democratic renewal continues, and it requires us to listen, participate, challenge inequality, and to ensure that the voices and experiences of women remain at the center of our national conversation. I would also like to thank everyone who made this occasion possible, our organizers, staff, students, and the colleagues who helped bring us together, and all of you who took the time today to attend and engage in this important conversation. I think the impact of this talk will last with you for the rest of this evening and week. Special thanks to our DVC academic, Professor Khan, Professor Tinwada Ojo, I don't know how she manages to do this, and Ms. Lebogang Ayobojo. Thank you also very much to Mr. Jayendra Naidu, Lizzie van Eysen, and Marissa Gardner of the Emma Mashinini Foundation for all that you do to make this event such a wonderful success. We appreciate the video tribute to Makulu Lekwaba from the faculty side. Thank you to Becky, Tando, and Rashika. May we also leave this gathering not only inspired by the women who came before us, but also challenged by their example. May their courage remind us that democracy is not a finished achievement. It is something that must continually be defended, deepened, and renewed. Once again, thank you to our speaker and discussant for the illuminating and deeply meaningful contributions. And thank you to all of you for being part of this wonderful occasion. Please join us now for some refreshments and engagements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Ish, we're going to sing Vulindlela, but yeah. Just a few announcements. May we please remain seated as Sina and Helen will usher our VIPs or our dignitaries to the restaurant upstairs. And before that, we'll also allow our dignitaries, the photography team have asked, our multimedia team have asked, if our dignitaries with our leadership from the university can just take a picture by the Emma Mashinini banner. And then another announcement is for our students, just patiently wait. We will usher you upstairs because we first want to honor our guests from outside the university that have also taken the time to be with us. Thank you so much. And then in the true UJ way, you know what we say, UJ? All the way. Awesome. Bon appetit.